Everyone, and welcome aboard the SV Californica. It's Father's Day weekend, and we're gonna go for a sail down to a real unique spot. We're gonna go down to Trestles Beach, which is a famous surf spot internationally. But what we're gonna go look at is the unique habitats right there at that beach. So there's unique sand dunes, there's a freshwater lagoon, and up in a riparian area as well. So for our target species today, we're going to look around the beach for a pink sand verbena, also known as Abronia umbellata. We're going to look at the lagoon there for Animopsis californica, also known as Yerba mansa. We're also going to look for our birds there at the freshwater lagoon. So we're going to look for a snowy egret. We're going to look for a killdeer. And we're also going to try to find a great blue heron. And after that, we're going to go up to the riparian area following the creek, and we're going to look for a California wild rose, a native rose known as Rosa californica. So it'll be a fun sail. It's not too far from here. Clara can't join us today. She's in Knoxville for work, but I have my trusty first mate here, Jack. Say hi, bud. And so we're gonna go see what we can find. Jack is an excellent bird watcher, and yeah, let's go for a sail. Okay, so right now we're leaving our home port of Dana Point, where we'll cruise down the Capistrano Bight to Trestles, which is at the northern end of San Onofre State Beach. Looks like we got some June gloom today. Jack doesn't mind. Dolphins, Jack. Jack just experienced his first pod of dolphins. He's pretty excited about it, as am I. Cool thing that we could experience together. We put on the autopilot and was able to sail with him. And I had Jack's leash and myself tied in so we could experience that together. It's pretty fun. What do you think, Bubba? Oh, he's looking for more. So he's gonna be my lookout dog now. Looking out for whales and dolphins and birds. He's a good boy. All right, so Jack and I are anchored in front of Trestles Beach right now. We're in about 30 feet of water, 5 scope, and which is overkill just for hanging here. But we don't have a working dinghy, so a little movie magic. The next clip you're gonna see, I'm gonna come back and do the hike to try to find our target species. So yeah, here we go. All right, well, we made it to Trestles, and as you can see, a very popular surfing destination here in Southern California. But what we're going to do is we're going to go check out 3 main types of habitat for plants and animals here. We're going to go look at some of the sand dunes that we see up here, this plant community. Then we're going to go over towards a freshwater marsh at the San Mateo Creek. And from there, we're going to go up into the wetlands to a riparian area to see all the plants and any birds we can find along the stream there at the San Mateo Creek. So let's check it out. All right, as you guys are coming down from the parking lot, the first thing you're gonna do is you come down the trail to get to the beach is you're going to cross underneath this bridge where the train will go by, as you just saw. But you're going to be welcomed by the sand dune habitat. And the first plant you'll see that's kind of dominant in this area is this ambrosia. So the common names are beach burr or silver ragweed. I don't like calling a lot of native plants weeds, but we'll call it beach burr. This is a real important plant for this habitat and for the ambrosia plume moth that needs this plant as its host to lay its eggs on for its and have its caterpillars and grubs to feed on this plant and grow into a mature moth and complete its life cycle. You can see it's providing also a lot of fruit and seed for habitat for birds that'll around here, but also that nectar source as well for any of the pollinators. Let's go see if we can find some of our other plants here in the sand dune habitat. So as you make your way up the beach towards Trestles, you'll follow a lot of these ambrosia that you'll see. And for looking for our target species, the pink sand verbena, just look for some of these tufts of these purplish pink flowers coming up and poking through. And here is one of our target species today. This is the pink sand verbena, or Abronia umbellata. And the species name umbellata refers to these type of flower that it has. So the flower has what's called an umbel, which is a group of flowers that all kind of from their stem goes to a central point. And so think like an umbrella. You have all those wires and things that come down to the pole there. That's like an umbel. So the species name umbellata. So this plant, it's a very drought tolerant plant, as you can see from its succulent like leaves to help it adapt to this real dry climate. But it's a great pollinator plant as well. So you can see on that umbel a lot of flowers and like a landing pad for butterflies. And the butterflies will be able to use their proboscis and get the nectar in from those, from the flowers themselves. So it's a great plant in butterfly gardens as well if you have nice sandy soil. It's a really, really beautiful plant as well. It's gonna be flowering through the spring and into the summer like we're seeing right now, and maybe even in the fall as well, but so more in the warmer seasons, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful plant. Okay, so as you come up from the sand dune areas, another really important plant that you'll find is called a sand dune buckwheat, or a dune buckwheat. Sea cliff buckwheat's another name for it, but it's Eriogonum parviflorum, and this plant is a real important pollinator plant here at the sand dune habitat, here at the beach and coastal area. But you can see it's all in bloom right now. So all these flowers are providing a lot of food sources for all these pollinators. So you're seeing a lot of native bees, you're seeing a lot of European honeybees, but this plant is actually a really important plant for a couple butterfly species. So this is the host plant for hair streaks, gray hair streaks, but also the Acmon blue. And this plant is that plant that those butterflies need to be able to complete their life cycles. So those butterflies will come, land, and lay their eggs, and those eggs will have their caterpillars, and again will complete that life cycle only on plants like these buckwheats, especially here in the sand dune area. So really, really cool plant. You see these flowers that are all nice and kind of creamish to pinks. Some of them, sometimes it's really a deep pink, but as they mature and go to seed, they're going to turn kind of that rust color, giving it kind of a two-tone, and it's real attractive in the garden setting, especially how it kind of cascades over. You can put it over rocks and other things. It's a really cool plant. So besides being real arid areas and having to overcome water loss, another challenge that these plants have to adapt to is high salt in the substrate in the soil. So these are real saline soils, they have a lot of salts in them, and so salt tolerance is another adaptation that they have to overcome. And one of those species that's really good at that is called saltgrass. And so this here is Disticus spicata, also known as saltgrass. It's distributed all in the sand dunes. and in saline soils and wetlands as well, those salt marshes. But you'll also find them in the deserts and the wetland areas there where salts can accumulate. So how does that salt really accumulate here? Well, one is that the ocean, but as well as that there's a lot of evaporation that occurs here. So you don't have a lot of fresh water coming from rains, that evaporation occurs and the salts remain, and creates a situation where you have a lot of salt buildup. And so that is one of the challenges that these salt saline type plants have to overcome. So saltgrass is one of those. So now that we saw the sand dunes, the next habitat we're gonna go check out is the San Mateo Lagoon, which is a freshwater marsh. And we're gonna go try to find our target species of Anemopsis californica, the Yerba mansa. We're gonna see some of the bird species that we wanna try to find as well, like the snowy egret, the great blue heron, and we'll see if we can find a killdeer as well. But one thing I also wanted to mention was, growing up here in Orange County, I always thought that Trestles was an Orange County, San Clemente destination for surfing. It was one of our gems here in Orange County. Turns out that yes, there's a part of Trestles that is from Orange County, but really where we're going in San Onofre is actually in San Diego County. So we're right here at the county line along the train tracks, where you have Orange County behind me into San Clemente, and then where we're going next to the San Mateo Lagoon, which is actually San Diego County. So they get to claim that one. All right, so here we are at the San Mateo Lagoon, which is a perfect example of a freshwater marsh. Now, we have different types of coastal marshes here in California. We have freshwater marshes, and then we also have saltwater marshes. Now, the freshwater marsh that we're seeing here is part of the San Mateo Creek, which is bringing fresh water from inland areas down to the ocean here. And so this one particularly is closed off. You can see the sandbar behind me from the ocean itself, and it's keeping a lot of that fresh water here, and the plants that we're seeing here are indicative of that freshwater marsh habitat. So there is a lot of salt still in here. There's a lot of salt in the soils that are built up, but you have that fresh water coming in to kind of keep the saline not as high as you would see in something like a saltwater marsh. Now, eventually we'll go up to somewhere like Newport Bay, the Back Bay up there, and we'll go and see an example of a saltwater marsh. But this is a really cool example of the San Mateo Creek bringing all that fresh water down to the ocean. One thing that's kind of cool about the San Mateo Creek itself is that it's not really connected to a lot of coastal runoff that we see from residential areas. So you'll see that in other watersheds, but this one particularly, you know, is connected from areas that's protected from Camp Pendleton, and so you don't have a lot of that urban runoff that's contributing to some of the pollutants here. So you got a real kind of healthy habitat. But the coastal marshes, there's not a whole lot of them left, you know, with development here on the coast. I think the last I read, there's only about 25% of them left. And I think the majority of that is up in San Francisco. So these are really rare habitats, and they're very important habitats for a lot of birds that are a part of that Pacific flyway that come, and they're looking for here to get a lot of food and to roost as well. So real important habitat. You see the snowy egret flying there behind me, our target species. So let's go see what we can find, see if we can go find some more of our target species. All right, so right away as we walked up to the San Mateo Lagoon, we found one of our target birds here. Here is the snowy egret. It came just to greet us. To distinguish it from something else like a great egret, you'll see that the snowy egret has a black bill with yellow feet. And on a great egret, you'll see the opposite. You'll see a yellow bill with black feet and legs, and so that's one way to be able to tell the difference. But yeah, right as we walked up, I didn't think we were gonna see it, and sure enough, it just flew right on and greeted us. So it was bouncing around, hunting and looking for fish and moving things around and feeding. So this habitat is a real important place for all these type of birds. So one plant that's indicative of this freshwater marsh is this one here. It's called typha. Also, a lot of people may know it as cattails. There's different species with different ones having larger sizes of that, but all of them you see are growing right here with its feet actually in the water. And so these freshwater marshes, plants, but also the saltwater marsh plants, have to deal with levels and fluctuating levels of salinity. And so having a lot of that salt buildup into the water, these plants have to overcome that. And so those are type of plants are called halophytes. And those are specialized plants with adaptations for fluctuating salt water. Okay, so right as I came around the bend here at the San Mateo Lagoon, I found this beautiful stand of our target species. This is Yerba mansa, also known as Anemopsis californica. Love those plants with our boat names. So this plant particularly puts on this real huge flower, these big cone-like flowers, and they're actually a little fragrant as well. What's also notable about this plant is that it spreads by these above ground stems called stolons. So you have typically two types of those type of running type of branches. You have above ground, they're called stolons. Below ground, you've probably heard this term before, called rhizomes. So below the soil surface, they're called rhizomes. Above ground, they're called stolons. And Animopsis is a perfect example of a plant that puts on stolons. You may know another plant, strawberries. Strawberries put on stolons, and they spread above ground on the soil surface and can resprout a new plant from that stolon, which you can see here happening with Animopsis. So this plant is indicative of a freshwater marsh, which we're seeing here, and it's just a beautiful stand here at the San Mateo Creek. So Animopsis californica. Right here, kind of bouncing around in the sand, or scooting around I should say, is the killdeer, or other target species. So these killdeers are really cool. They when they lay their eggs, they'll lay it around in the sand here, and the adults will actually kind of make a lot of noise and walk far away from the eggs and pretend to be injured and flap a wing around to kind of distract you and try to take you away from where those eggs might be. Right now, we're gonna get the sand out of my shoes and walk up the San Mateo Creek and look at different coastal habitats. So we'll see examples of, like we're seeing here, kind of a mixed chaparral and coastal sage scrub. But as we walk up the creek, we're gonna see an example of a riparian zone. So from that, we're gonna try to find our next target species, which is the California wild rose, or Rosa californica. So as you're walking along the San Mateo Creek trail here, there's one plant you want to be cautious of. So this is poison oak, or Toxicodendron diversilobum. And so a way to know and identify this plant is, you may have heard, leaves of three. I'll say that again, leaves of three, let it be. And so each one of these leaves is actually called a leaflet, and so all three leaves together make up the actual leaf. And so it can have a diverse look in its leaf. As you can see, it can be nice and green like this, and then also can mature into a lot of this red kind of color you see as well. They can have different leaf sizes as well. So you're seeing kind of larger leaves here. That's kind of those that are in more shade, have a little bit more water, where this plant can also grow in the full sun and get real red stressing, which we're probably going to see in a little bit, and can have different characteristics. So looking for poison oak, you're going to see, yes, leaves of three, let it be. That red coloration that starts to show, that's another way to identify poison oak. So I'm walking on a bridge that goes over the San Mateo Creek, and there's a good example of a lot of the tall trees that you're going to see in this riparian habitat. So all that water from the creek is going to be able to support such large organisms. So behind me I have a cottonwood or populus. I believe this one is Fremont's cottonwood or Populus fremontii. We also have willows. So this here is a Pacific willow or salix. And then we also have these giant sycamores or western sycamores, Platanus racemosa. So another plant that looks like poison oak but isn't is our target species, the California wild rose or Rosa californica. And you can see it's just a beautiful rose, smaller, delicate than something that's more in like a garden, but it will have thorns. It will have the little red fruits that you might see on roses. But you can see that its leaves have that leaflets, but typically around 5 per actual larger leaf, where the poison oak will have 3. And so there is poison oak in and around it. In fact, there's some right behind me. So just be careful and use these tips to be able to identify it. But the California wild rose, one of our target species. So once you hike a little bit higher up the San Mateo Trail and you get past a lot of those sycamores, you're going to come across a lot of these trees, large shrubs to trees that have a lot of these yellow umbels, we learned that term today, like flowers, and that are going to fruit right now. This plant is called Sambucus nigra, subspecies Soralia. It used to be Sambucus mexicana, but commonly it's known as blue elderberry. And it's a really good plant here in the riparian area, kind of transitioning into more of our coastal sage scrub, chaparral kind of area. And this is a great plant for birds. You also get butterflies on those flowers, but as those flowers then mature to the berry, it's going to provide a lot of food for foraging berry eaters, and which are birds and coyotes and other mammals will also eat them as well. But this is another great plant. I have it in my yard. I love it. It's Sambucus nigra, subspecies Soralia, blue elderberry. Looks like some dolphins came to play with the surface as well. Alright everyone, thank you for joining us today. Hit that like and subscribe button and help us build this channel. Share the videos. And yeah, just want to thank you all for coming along. And we'll see you on the next video. What do you think, guys? He's a weird dog.